Good morning, Lancers. Welcome back for our third episode of our Teachers Brewing Coffee and Reading Poetry. I'm not going to take up too much of our time today because we've got a special guest, Mrs. Temple, who's going to be reading for us today. So without any further ado, let me just wish you a great weekend and a great week next week. And I will see you all for episode 4. Other than that, I'm going to let Mrs. Temple take it away.
Hi, I'm Kira Temple, and I'm going to share with you the poem One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing things isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost, that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last, or next to last, of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, the gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. So that's One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. Elizabeth Bishop lived between 1911 and 1979 in the United States. She was very smart, very independent, very beautiful, and of course very creative and a great letter writer as well as a poet. I picked this poem today because it's got a really interesting format. It's got a topic we can all relate to, a theme we can certainly relate to, and a tone that I think is really relevant for today. So right now we're in the middle or at the beginning or near the end, I don't know where, of the coronavirus shelter in place here in Nevada. We've been out of school for a few weeks and we don't know how much longer it will be. If you hear any interesting noises in the background, we've got chickens next door, a dog down the hill, a neighbor who's doing some sawing in his garage, and of course my 2 kids are outside with me. So if you hear any noises, that's what it is. So One Art is a poem that is about loss, and I think right now we're definitely fearing loss, and everyone is experiencing loss in different ways. I think about the class of 2020 when I think about loss, because they've lost a really important moment in their lives. They're all still going to graduate, but the parties and the ceremony and just all the wonderful things that happen when you're 18, 19 years old and graduating, those are lost to them. The prom and just all the goodbyes and hellos that start at that time. I really feel for the senior class of this year all across the United States. So if you know any kids who are graduating this year, think of them and do something extra special, because this is a moment that they have lost, that other people have gotten to have. I think about families who have loved ones who are sick or who are quarantined, and that's really, really sad. I feel sad thinking about that. And then we've just lost our everyday routines that we're used to. We can't go to the gym. We can't go to the grocery store whenever we feel like it and just pick up a couple things. So in a way, we've lost freedom. And it's not because of any individuals. It's because of a disease. And that's scary. So we've lost our sense of security. So I think that a poem about loss is really wonderful, and not romantic loss, but loss of everyday things, and also the loss of significant things. So I picked the poem because of its topic. And the theme, more specifically, is that loss happens every day. So the poem starts off with little things that the speaker has lost, like keys or an hour here and there. And she talks about how it's not hard to lose things. And then she loses things with a little more significance. Her mother's watch, a home. And of course, if she's lost her mother's watch, what does that tell us? That she's lost her mother as well. And then it goes into some abstraction. She's lost cities and continents and rivers. And I don't know what those might be symbols for, but it is interesting to consider what a river or a continent in one's life might be. And then she gets to the very end where she's losing a relationship. And we don't know if it's a romantic relationship or a friend or a family member. We'll talk about that more. So the theme that loss happens every day, and we can shrug it off and say it's not any disaster. It's easy to lose things. But then at the end of that loss, it is very difficult. It is disaster. And then I want to talk about the format of this poem. This poem is formatted in what's called a villanelle. Villanelle. It's a beautiful word. You can look up how to spell it, villanelle. And you might have heard a lot of repetition in this poem. There are 2 lines that are repeated 4 times each. So you may have heard loss is no disaster a number of times and hard to master a number of times. And so each of those words, master and disaster, rhyme, and those rhyme 13 other times with words like faster, fluster, last, or vaster, and gesture. And then the words intent, spent, meant, went, continent, and evident all rhyme. Those are the only 2 rhyming sounds, aster and ent. In most poems, you have day, way, cat, hat, and the poem moves on from rhyme to rhyme to rhyme. So there's a variety of sounds. But in this poem, there's only 2 sounds. And so the story, although it goes from little things that the speaker has lost to significant things, there still doesn't feel like there's movement. And so you're sort of stuck in this replay all the time. And that really speaks to me because I feel like that's where I am in my life right now, and maybe you feel that way too. Time is passing, but we're stuck in the same moment every day. Our routines are gone from what they were, and so even though time is moving forward, you just feel stuck in your life. You don't feel like your life is moving forward. And I'm lucky to be here with my kids and be safe, but I do feel like my life is not moving forward right now. I feel like I'm in this frustrated suspension of time. And I think that's the tone of this poem, this frustrated suspension of time. So I want to go to the very last stanza, which looks different from the rest of the poem. It still has 4 lines, but its punctuation is different, and the tone really changes. Maybe you heard it the first time I read it. You'll definitely hear it the second time. The last stanza begins with a hyphen. A dash. It's not connecting words, it's breaking up the stanza. Thank you. Go with your sister. Go. We think about punctuation as stopping language, like a period or a comma stops language, but it doesn't. Punctuation opens up language, and punctuation says things that aren't written in words, like a question mark. It doesn't stop. It adds in ideas about asking and questioning and wondering. And so in this stanza, the dash adds in ideas about hesitation and self-doubt. So it begins with a dash, followed by even losing you. So this, even losing you, followed by a parenthetical. And when something is put in a parenthetical, that means that it isn't said out loud really in the mind. It's more of a really internal idea. The joking voice, a gesture I love. And those details, to be said so internally, is very beautiful, and we all have little details in our lives that we miss once they're gone. And then that's followed with this strange sentence, I shan't have lied. And I don't know who she's talking about lying to, whether it's the person who's gone, or herself, or to us, the audience. Finally, it follows with, it's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master. though it may look like, and then here comes the final interesting bit, another parenthetical in italics, where she says, write it, exclamation mark, like disaster. So I'll read that whole poem one more time, and I hope you can hear this tone of time that has stopped. I hope you hear the repetition in the sounds that create that feeling of stopped time, and I hope that you enjoy it. One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day. Accept the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then, practice losing farther, losing faster, places and names, and where it was you meant to travel. None of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last, or next to last, of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. So thank you, and enjoy poetry today.